Differences can create tension without a healthy relationship around it, right?
We can be successful at business, but friendship is first, so that's important. So it's like an investment.
At some point, our goals, may diverge, but we have a commitment to be in this together until we're not.
Welcome to Decision Points. I'm Doug Hudson. Thank you if you're watching online, if you're listening. Thank you for choosing and making some time for us. Incredibly excited today. We've got two guests. We have the co-founders and very close friends. Did you meet in college?
We did.
Okay. We have Scott Wood and Mark Gehlbach, the two co-founders and leaders of True North. And let me walk you through what a few of highlights what your bio says. You founded True North in 2000 with the single goal of eliminating conflicts of interest and the client-advisor relationship. Are we still there today as True North?
Still there.
Isn't that incredible?
Yeah, it is.
I love the clarity, and I love this in both of your all's bio. People will have a business for 40, 50 years and sometimes not have that clarity. So kudos to both of you. Mark, you're responsible for the leadership of True North's managing directors, providing strategic and cultural direction for the firm's future, and advise many of the firm's largest families and institutions. Scott, CEO and architect of True North's vision, strategy, and culture. You both help shape the growth, profitability, and marketing of the firm. One of really True North, our perspective, our greater purpose is fulfilling lives. True North's core purpose to fulfill lives inside and outside of the firm. Mark, my first day, you pulled me into an office and said, Doug, we're going to grow. But if we lose our culture and our mission, then it's all for naught. We'll get into that more. Both of you serve on multiple boards, foundations, charitable organizations in North Texas, and enjoy spending time with your families, your church, and your friends. Mark and Scott, welcome to Decision Points.
Thank you, Doug.
Thanks, Doug.
It's fun to be here.
Let's get into it. Mark, where are you from?
I'm from Waco, Texas.
No.
Yes, sir.
You went to college there.
I did. I finished college too.
You finished college?
I did.
So grade school, high school, everything there?
Yeah, so my dad was a professor at Baylor.
Of what?
Of biology and ecology.
No way.
So growing up in Waco, you want to get out of Waco and come to Dallas or go somewhere else. But I had the benefit of having a faculty scholarship. My parents were middle class, and so free college education. As long as I maintained to be average, it's kind of hard to pass up.
And you did that.
And I did that. Right.
And I bet you that often you surpassed that. Scott, where'd you grow up?
Richardson, Texas, primarily, but Dallas, the Dallas area. Pierce High School.
Okay, all right. Which high school in Waco did you go
Midway.
to? Midway, yeah. How was y'all's football team when you were there?
It was good. Waco High was the perennial.
Was the better?
Football powerhouse, but we were good. We were in a lower district division, but now Midway is the team.
So how often, I imagine obviously Dallas, we're an hour and a half from Waco.
Yep.
Can you believe what has happened in Waco in the last 10 years?
I can't. I have to pinch myself.
I know.
Waco's a little bit cool now.
Yeah, it's almost cool.
I mean, and again, my sister went to Baylor, but I never went when she was there. She's 3 years older. So living here for all these years, it's like you would go to a Baylor something and turn around and come back.
For sure.
And now all of a sudden, our family is involved in a business down there, so I've spent some more time. The Brazos is beautiful. It's like this gym that's starting, and downtown has more buildings than it's this special place that kind of was locked in time for maybe 50 years.
Probably.
And then really Chip and Joanna really helped. And now it's a tourist attraction.
It is. There are people from overseas that come in just to see Chip and Joanna's creation.
It's spectacular.
Yeah.
But now it's brought that spotlight to Waco.
For sure, it's
So,
been a good thing. for
yeah,
Waco.
100%. And it's good for Baylor too.
Yeah,
And now
for sure.
all those kind of rising tides all help. Scott, what were you into in high school? Sports, music, arts, all of the above?
I mean, it was probably sports, but I was not an athlete, and so I bounced around a lot, but probably sports more than anything else.
It's funny. He says he's not an athlete. It's your fitness. But
Yes, but there's a difference between fitness
Yeah,
and being
that's right.
athletic. Like, you can be fit, but not necessarily
Yeah.
athletic.
If the ball's involved, may not be.
Or vice versa. You can be athletic and not necessarily fit. So
That's true. He also happens to be incredible at water sports, which I think you are as well. So there are different types of different ways to express.
That's right.
The athleticism.
That's right.
What were you into?
Athletics.
What'd you play?
I played soccer.
Yeah.
I was a triathlete way
No
back
way.
when.
Like even in high school, you were.
Yes.
Did you do a full triathlon? Are you kidding me?
Runner. Yeah, it was a little weird growing up in Central Texas being a soccer player.
you competed in races with Lance Armstrong.
For sure. I didn't really compete with Lance.
You were in the same races that Lance was
Seriously.
in back
when he was
back as he was
in
on
Plano,
his ascension.
16-year-old.
Y'all same age?
No, he's younger than me.
But literally, you all would essentially hit the start line at the same time, so to speak.
Yeah, that's
Understood.
about when
Right.
it did.
I'm not sure Mark ever saw him,
Understood.
but
I didn't see him.
But he was
I
in the
saw him.
race.
When Lance was lapping him was in Waco. Did you compete in Waco?
Yeah, Lake Waco.
No way.
Open water swim. Yeah.
Isn't there an triathlon that's there annually?
Yes.
Or just there was a very big one that was there? Yeah.
That's annually.
Annually?
I was in the first one.
No way.
Yeah.
What is it? You know what it's called?
It was called Waco Striders Triathlon way back when. I don't know what it's called right now, but.
What do you take away from how many have you done and what do you take away from
Oh,
it?
I haven't done a whole lot. I was kind of into that.
The fact if you've done one of them puts you in what do you take away from them?
You know, there's a lot of discipline to it, and it's about the journey and the preparation rather than the actual event. But you know, I think similar to Scott, we're both very disciplined people, so we like setting a goal. I'm very goal oriented.
Yep.
And it's a great way to do it.
How has that helped you in business and or life?
Well, I'm a autonomous person to begin with, so I'm a self-starter. I'm goal-oriented. I compete with myself. So I think those things just naturally lend itself to my personality. But it's the journey. We'll talk about this, I'm sure.
Yep.
But Scott and I have been working together for 25 years.
Yep.
We've known each other for 38 years. I did the calculation.
You did the math?
I did the math.
Why'd you do that?
Scary.
There's no black. I mean, there's no gray, right? It's
Why'd
black
you
and
do
white.
that?
But
and so, you know, it's been and we'll get into it, but it's putting one foot in front of the other.
Yeah, it's good.
On every day, just coming in and doing what you can do.
I would say like having discipline as a core part of who you are, who you develop into. Like when times get tough, you can just rely on the discipline of like, if I just put one foot in front of the other and just keep plodding, keep going. If you have that discipline, it makes that journey a little easier, because you may not know exactly what you need to do, but if you're like, well, I know I need to take care of my health, and I know I need to get a good night's sleep, and I know I need to eat reasonably healthy, and I need to take care of my family and relationships, and you know, the discipline of those things, I think makes the journey when things get tough a little bit easier.
Yeah,
it helps you get through to the other side.
yeah, exactly. You have in a sense, if you're disciplined, you probably have a process that helps drive you through something difficult. You've seen so many people, wealthy families, many of those sold a successful business to obtain that generational wealth. What percent anecdotally would you say that we're highly, medium, low disciplined?
I think to optimize an exit, if that's what your question is, I see less discipline around, or
For
less
sure.
understanding. It's more situational without a lot of thought.
Situational and emotional.
And emotional and reactionary. And you know, I think successful business people have an intuitive sense, right? And so they can have a great outcome. I wouldn't say it's an optimal outcome always. And when I say optimal, I'm talking holistically,
100%.
Personally, professionally, all of that.
Which is the lens to which we at True North try to always lead and consult and guide our families and 100% holistically. I mean, fulfilling lives, that's personal and professional.
For sure.
I think where I want to push in here for a minute, because I think it's interesting, as we have those of you who are watching, listening, I just got to believe there's some really successful people, again, personally or financially, that wouldn't necessarily consider themselves highly disciplined.
For sure. Yeah, I think you can be very successful and passionate and even not have a plan.
Yes.
So we had the good fortune of being at a hotel that's probably one of the top brands in the world. And I had the good fortune of meeting with a guy that had worked for the founder for 35 years. And he said, you know what? We never started to be a hotel brand, which blew me away because we've been goal-oriented. And so it just goes to show you, I think people can have general success with a lot of passion. And I think, you know, later on, certainly after 35 years, you're going to have a plan in year 5 or 10, or you got to be more focused, obviously.
Yep.
But I think people can generally be very successful if they're passionate.
Yeah, and I think I heard both of you say, and I think jump in here when you're ready, I think what I heard in that is you listening or watching might be the leader of a $50 million revenue business with a strong EBITDA and all this kind of stuff, and you may not consider yourself a highly disciplined person. What I started to hear us address there, as you would contemplate exiting,
yes,
it's a really smart time to get some discipline and maybe aware of the blind spot. Hey, I'm not a super disciplined guy or gal. Maybe I should be listening to some coaching or some consultants to say, Doug, Sue, whatever your name is, get some help here.
Well, let me give you a great example. So, you know, financial discipline, obviously incredibly important. And, you know, a number of our guests on the podcast have talked about the importance of financial discipline, particularly as you approach the exit. In the early stages of our business, when we first were working together, I'd come from more of a brokerage background. Well, we both came from sort of a brokerage background. I had been in production, you know, I don't know, maybe 10 years at that point. And so a very cash flow oriented mindset. It's like, how much cash flow can you pull out of your production versus how much can you reinvest back in the business, right? It's normal. It's a very cash flow driven mindset. Plus I was young. I probably have some things in my background that, you know, sort of had me think about money, maybe not entirely correctly. Mark was always super disciplined, to use the word, but also just very thoughtful about the discipline around reinvesting in the business and not running the business for maximum cash flow. And, you know, early on when we were partners, there were some tension around those conversations because he had the lens and recognized the value and the importance of reinvesting in the business, which we've effectively done for 23 years, versus wanting to maximize the current cash flow. And so, I mean, that's a good example of, you know, we were disciplined. I kept the books back then, and we were disciplined about the accounting, but there was a different lens. You know, Mark had a different perspective, which was the right perspective, a much more mature perspective at that time, about what we needed to do to be able to grow and scale the business. And then, you know, you fast forward 23 years, we've never had to take outside capital. We've been able to kind of finance it out of cash flow all these years. A little bit of, you know, bank debt here and there, but for the most part, you know, just out of cash flow. And we're absolutely going to get into that. Let me back up a little bit. Do y'all remember meeting each other and how?
I do.
What happened?
Mark loves to tell this story.
So he was hammered at Melody Ranch.
No.
Okay, all right.
Nothing like that.
No, the story I'm going to tell is not when I first met you, though.
Why?
Because the story I'm going to tell is a better story.
Okay. It's a solid value proposition. All right, go.
So a mutual friend of the three of ours was rushing me for a fraternity that I had pre-selected when I was a senior, what I was going to be.
This is Brooks, correct?
This is Brooks.
Yes.
No, this
Shout
is
out
Dudley.
to Brooks.
No, this is Dudley.
Dudley
this is
Callison.
Dudley.
Remember
Okay,
Dudley?
shout out to Dudley. Yes.
So he's we both lived on the same hall, same dorm room. And I knew a little bit about Scott. I had a preformed opinion of Scott, and I plan.
You want to tell us what that preformed opinion was?
Yes.
I plan everything. I have a strategy on everything. Scott will verify that. But I had an opportunity. Dudley was in my dorm room. I was the first door to the hallway. It was open. We're having a conversation. He's the rush chairman. This is the fraternity I want to get into. It's important. It's an important conversation. And Scott comes bebopping along, knows Dudley, and comes in and sits down. And I'm like, what the
hell? That's what it was.
That's
He's
exactly.
like, who is this guy?
I'm like, get the heck out of here.
He already preformed the opinion. He's like,
Yeah.
now he just reinforced every opinion about him that I preformed.
Scott had, he was almost a towhead. You had really blonde hair. And, you know, he's kind of happy-go-lucky. And I was like, who is this guy?
Stealing my opportunity to get into.
Yeah.
You can say there are a lot of Sigma Chi brothers out there.
Yeah. So anyway.
That's the first time.
That's not the first time we met.
Okay.
But I will tell you.
When was the first time we met?
I don't know.
Because that's the story I thought you were going to tell.
No.
Okay.
It was earlier than that. Because again, that was before. Well, anyway.
What's funny about that? So from my perspective,
Yes.
I knew Dudley.
Because you guys are freshmen.
We're freshmen.
So is Dudley a sophomore or junior?
Sophomore.
Sophomore. Okay. All right.
And you know, I mean, I'm kind of like a puppy dog. I just sort of live in the
Puppy
now.
dog.
I just sort of live right now, right here, present.
Golden Retriever or like a Chihuahua?
maybe-
Golden Retriever.
Yeah,
Definitely
I
Golden
knew
Retriever.
what it was. I've known both of you for 30 years.
And so I'm going down the hall, and there's Dudley. I'm like, Dudley, you know, I mean, there's no.
He doesn't grasp the situation.
There's
very
no
often.
malintent.
Correct.
There's no I'm crashing your rush party. I'm going to take away a slot from you. There's no Machiavellian kind of like.
You weren't assessing that you were interrupting Mark's 90-day plan.
No, I
that
was
was fully executed until you showed up.
Yes.
So how long did you hang out in the room?
I felt like it was a minute, but clearly it was longer than that.
I might have made it uncomfortable for him.
So I love that. So y'all meet, keep going. Where do y'all go from there? Because here you are.
Yeah,
Where do
so
y'all go from
we're in
there?
the same pledge class. You know, Scott and I are very similar in a lot of ways and very different in a lot of ways. But the similarities are formed well enough that we really kind of liked each other.
Yep.
So that begot, you know, rushing together, becoming members together, being co-rush chairman, living together.
Yep.
I mean, we just did a lot of
100%.
stuff.
I want to lean into this because I think one of the really benefits to this talk today is 50-50 partners and having a partner. Should I not? I feel like the 30 years I've been in kind of the business world, you know, one person says never have a partner.
Yep.
The other person says, oh, if I just had a partner.
Yep.
So I want to address this. How are you all similar? How are you different? And both of you maybe address that. What are the similarities and differences?
Yeah, so we're both, you know, on an autonomous perspective. We're both self-starters.
Yep.
We're both motivated. We're both competitive. We're both disciplined. Now, I'm a couple standard deviations beyond Scott on that.
Yep.
But I respect that, right? I respect somebody who wants to work hard. We both have the same work ethic.
Yep.
We both have very similar goals. We share a Christian faith that's very important to us.
Yep.
I think we have a balanced mindset on what we want our life to be. So True North is very important, but it's not the number one thing for us. And so we have that together. but we're very different.
Yeah.
You know, he went to New York, I went to DC.
Yeah.
But both on the East Coast,
Yeah.
both not
Yeah.
a non-traditional Baylor exit or
Yeah.
landing pad.
Yeah, you didn't go straight to Dallas or Houston or whatever. Yeah.
So there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Scott likes to focus on one thing where I like a lot of different things.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so I think that's very complementary.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm more detail oriented.
Yep.
Not that he's not. But,
Correct. Yep. Because he ran the books for those early years. How would you assess the similarities and differences?
I would say I'd just say it's very similar to the way Mark described it. You know, the similarities are definitely the discipline, and then, you know, just like recreationally outdoors, you know, adventure
Yep.
kind of, you know.
Hobbies are similar.
Yes. And then, you know, the differences, and this is maybe to the point of your question, but like the differences can certainly be a thorn, right? And it's like it's like a marriage. We talk about this all the time. It's it's a, you know, it's a work marriage. He refers to me as his work wife. I think I'm the work husband, but no.
Well, do you refer to him as the work wife as well? You're not sure.
It's the work
He never
marriage.
had the name.
It's a work marriage, but you know, it's the differences can create tension without a healthy relationship around it, right? So I think, you know, we spend a lot of time working hard on our relationship. This week, you know, we had our monthly dinner where we go to dinner, and
can't talk business.
Yeah, there's no business.
Seriously.
So we had
it's all relational.
We had a 2.5 hour dinner, and literally, I mean, we didn't talk business for 1 minute.
It's incredible.
And
how often have y'all done that?
We've been doing that for 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
You know, we
didn't necessarily start by doing that,
no,
but at some point you realize
we spent a lot more time. So think about formation. We've known each other 38 years.
Good point.
We've been working together 25 years. So we had, you know, much smaller families. Then you have kids. Then you know.
It's well said.
And when the business was smaller, and it was just the two of us,
we used to do literally everything together.
Yeah, exactly. So that was a natural overflow of your time schedules as they got more demanding with families. Yes.
Yeah, and I will say we made the promise to each other that we're going to focus on our friendship always, and we can be successful at business, but friendship is first, so that's important. So it's like an investment.
I love it.
But it's no different than it is like a marriage, and we can get into partnership, non-partnership. It works for us. I think I know why it works, but there's that commitment to each other and appreciating differences, and much like we do with our spouses, sometimes differences are the biggest irritant. But then you got to remember, okay, well, that's complementary.
Correct.
That's probably why it's working.
Yep.
And so if you have a foundation of trust, if you're intent on sowing into the relationship, you tend to give your partner the benefit of the doubt, and realize that sometimes the assumptions you make, he or she are not doing it to piss you off. It's what they do. So does that make sense?
100% go.
We made you know, Mark referenced it, but, you know, we said in the beginning, if being in business together ever interferes or has the ability to ruin a friendship, then we're not doing it. Like that's we're not going to get into business and then wreck a friendship.
Yep.
And so that's always been first and foremost, you know, from day one. And then, you know, at some point our goals, you know, may diverge in terms of, you know, how, you know, Mark is a new empty nester within the last year. I've still got one more kiddo in school. You know, we may diverge in terms of goals and objectives at some point in terms of how we want to live out the rest of our lives, but we have a commitment to be in this together until we're not.
Yep.
Right.
It's incredible.
And so, you know, there's tremendous peace in that, right? You never have to really question. We talk a lot about pacing and the speed of which we work, and the speed of how we grow. And I always say that if we're going fast, that usually feels good to me.
Yep.
And I'm not uncomfortable with that. If we're going slow, that makes me uncomfortable. I get frustrated, and I'm kind of like, you know, why aren't we moving? And it's a little bit of the opposite for Mark. If we're going too fast, that makes Mark uncomfortable. I think it makes him feel like maybe, you know, all the boxes aren't checked and all the I's aren't dotted, and something might break. And, you know, if we're going too slow or slower, he's usually a little more comfortable with that. And so I think our speed is when we're both a little uncomfortable.
So well said.
A little slower for me, maybe a little fast for him. That's probably the right cadence and the right pace. And I think our personalities, strengths, weaknesses, how we make decisions have kind of a, you know, sometimes we do go too fast, sometimes we do go too slow. But for the most part, we've sort of found this pace that sits in the middle. You know, we're kind of in there. And to go back to your original question, I would say that for us, and you know, this certainly wouldn't be true for everyone, but for us, there's no question in my mind that True North is a better company than it would be if it were just me.
Sure.
I won't put words in Mark's mouth.
I would say the same thing. There's no doubt about it.
You know, the company is better because, you know, in this case, two heads are better than one.
Yep. Why do you believe it's been successful, the partnership?
Well, I think there's a commitment to the relationship. So again, we share a similar worldview. We're committed Christians.
Yep.
So I know what his heart, the quality of his heart is, and I also know the quality of my heart.
Yep.
And it's not always good,
That's
right?
That's right.
But there's a thing called forgiveness. And so there's a huge amount of trust there. But like I said, we've known each other for 38 years. We've been married multiple decades. It's a similar relationship to a marriage.
Yep.
And usually when he's ebbing, I'm arcing, and the opposite. And so it really works. And I think it works because we have different skill sets.
Why do you think it works?
Well, I mean, I think at the end of the day, you know, trust is underneath all this, right? And so, I mean, I never, not for one day in 25 years have I ever not trusted Mark's intention. I mean, we may disagree.
Yeah, we disagree.
100%.
But
we fight like spouses.
But there's not one day.
But we love each other, so it's all good.
There's not one day where I've ever not trusted, or, you know, I mean, I've questioned goals or decisions and vice versa, but there's never one day where I haven't trusted my partner.
There's so, obviously, we all share that same worldview. And so I think where this is so mirrored to that is forgiveness, assume the best. And I think there's this myth, and if you have a partner in your business, the myth is that if I'm mad at you or I disagree with you, it means I don't trust you. And so therefore people start getting bitter, and I don't address an issue or you don't. And that lack of communication, that lack of having hard conversations, that lack of both being slightly uncomfortable is absolutely probably what kills most relationships, business or personal.
For sure. I would say, you know, having that level of trust, it's easy for us to get in a disagreement.
Yes.
But still love the person,
That's
right? And talk about it. And I mean, we have arguments.
How many times? Go.
Well, I was just going to say, so what's interesting is in the, you know, sort of the arc of this whole partnership and friendship over 38 years, like when we were seniors in college, we talked about starting a business together.
You took the question right out of my mouth. Okay.
I'm like a puppy dog. I'm like right here, right now in the day. So I don't have this great sort of, you know, memory recall. My wife does, so thankfully we can remember most things. But I remember the conversation that Mark and I had when we were seniors. You know, we shared a room. We had, you know, two other roommates who shared a room, and you know, we were just falling asleep one night, and I was like, man, wouldn't it be cool one day if we could come up with a business together? And I think, you know, at the time I knew I was probably headed down the finance track, and you know, we didn't talk about what it might look like or what the business would be. We just said, wouldn't that be cool? And you know, what's interesting about that conversation is neither one of us knew what our giftedness was or our unique ability or what particular skill sets we had or what we could each contribute to a business. It wasn't like, oh, you're the finance guy and you're the marketing guy. It was kind of, you know, we were just still pretty self-unaware of, you know, kind of how we had been wired. And then we, you know, fast forward, we start the business, we get going, and we still really didn't know, like, you know, where the strengths and weaknesses were. And so we just started doing everything together. Like we just sort of shoulder to shoulder, side by side. We just, you know, we went to every meeting together. We just did everything together. I did keep the books in the beginning, and, you know, there were probably other things that Mark did independent of me, but for the most part, we just didn't know. And then what's been cool over 25 years is to figure out, oh, he's really good at that. And if he's got an issue or a concern, I need to listen to that. And, you know, there's things about, you know, that Mark can discern where I'm like, okay, that's a blind spot for me, and I need to pause and pay attention and listen to that. And so learning that over 25 years of making, you know, thousands of decisions together has been really cool.
And the irony is our respective spouses are more like our partners. So in other words, like there's training going on at home and there's skills being built at home that we just then apply. And our respective partners can also give us the perspective of the business partner.
So we another thing we do, and you know, you said earlier, what, you know, what's part of the secret? Part of the secret is, I said trust, but part of it is it's this relationship. It's being intentional about your relationship. So another thing we do as couples is every calendar quarter, just coincidentally, each of us have our birthday, right? So I'm Q2, Christy's Q3, Alicia's Q4, and Mark's Q1. And so every quarter we do a dinner with the girls, and you know, there's no agenda. We just go have dinner and have a good time. But it's funny because oftentimes in these dinners,
it's my wife and Scott.
I'll end up talking to Christy and Alicia and Mark, they've got their conversation, and Christy and I are over here having our conversation. And you know, it's just kind of funny the way that the dynamic
worked out.
Where did the conversation happen, and how did it go from? How did it grow to start a business together? I know it started that first night there in college as seniors. You guys go different directions. You go to New York, you go to DC. When's the conversation happen to start a business together?
You know, I don't remember the exact dates, but I would say mid to late 90s.
Okay. And where are you at this point? What are you doing?
So, you know, there's a serendipitous nature to all this, because I was at Smith Barney with a group called the Consulting Group that was really the pioneers of fee-based management.
Okay. Is that here now in Dallas? Are you still in DC?
No, this is, I was in Texas.
Okay.
No longer in DC, but those guys, because they wanted to avoid conflict and of interest, went to the CEO of the organization and said, look, we need to roll out vendor services back in. There's too many conflicts, of which I saw going on. And the CEO said, no, we're not gonna let that happen. And they did it anyway. Those guys started a firm called Lockwood Financial. Scott was working for a bank. There was a bank merger, and banking's infinite wisdom, they decided to get out of the money management business. And so he and his partners had to find a new home. Lo and behold, they joined the new nascent firm called Lockwood. All of a sudden, we had the groundwork of wanting to do something together. The organization that I was working with, the brains had left the building. I knew Scott. I knew those guys. It was time.
Wow.
And we were young and naive, and we didn't know what we didn't know.
Well, 100%, right? If we knew all the pain in front of us, that's why we always say we want to know the future. No, you don't. If you knew all the painful decisions that were going to have or consequences, we would all just stay huddled up somewhere and wouldn't do anything. So interesting. You're staying close, probably. You're staying engaged.
Yeah, sure.
And I don't think I ever heard that part.
Every year we do a Labor Day trip with some guys that we graduated from college with. So at least once a year we were, spending
connected.
time together, and, we would share stories, compare notes.
We spent more time than that together.
Yeah.
So when that happens, when the group from your consulting group move out, is that when you all start the business together?
Not immediately,
Okay.
but soon thereafter.
So you're both going a sense. Did you go to work with this new group as well?
No,
or?
I stayed with the big brokerage firm.
Okay.
And probably, when did you join Lockwood?
It's like 95.
Okay, so we started probably talking in 96, late
Okay.
96, or late 90, probably 97,
Okay.
and then started working together in late 98.
Okay.
So
to walk us through that genesis, just a little, give us some color to y'all decide to finally just open True North.
Yeah, I mean, so I'd been at Chase, big bank,
Yep.
you know, as Mark said, the Chase, this is before JP Morgan Chase. So
Yep.
Chase merges with Chemical Bank. Chemical Bank's the lead bank in that merger, and all their infinite wisdom, they shut down the wealth management business. I'm now a free agent. I go join Lockwood.
Yep.
After a long process
Yep.
to figure out
Understood.
where to
Yep.
land. And that was where I realized, that you didn't have to be affiliated with a big bank or a big brokerage
Yep.
firm to be in the advisory business,
Yep.
because their Lockwood's platform was, we're going to go create the infrastructure for independent advisors to be able to do what you could do inside of a large brokerage firm,
Yep.
right? So prior to firms like Lockwood, they weren't the only one, but they were definitely a dominant player at that time. If you were an independent advisor, you were probably a financial planner. You were probably charging a fee, you know, whatever, 10 grand a year to do financial planning. If you were doing any investing at all, you were investing and allocating money across mutual funds, and you were opening an individual account with each mutual fund family. And so then at the end of the month or end of the quarter, you know, the client's going to get 10 different statements from 10 different mutual fund families. It was just a very
Yep.
complicated structure.
clumsy,
So Lockwood's
yep.
goal was to sort of simplify all that for the independent advisor. So all of a sudden now, you don't have to be at, you know, Merrill Lynch, Smith Barney, big brokerage firm, or
Yep.
big bank, because Lockwood now has this infrastructure. So I joined, and then, you know, sort of quickly realized, wow, there's an opportunity
Yep.
here to go do something on my own, and began to think about that.
Yep.
And then at the same time, you know, Mark's running a parallel track in San Antonio with Smith Barney. And then, you know, we just started talking, and then timing worked out to where, you know, my business was, I had a small book of business, but it was growing, and he was with a partner in San Antonio, and it was kind of like, hey, why don't we just do this together?
Yep.
And then Mark moved to Dallas, and then we got going.
Rest
Got
is
after it.
history.
And so then we were, you know, we sort of incubated it further for another 18 months or so, and then we launched in
And then you
July
launched.
of 2000.
July 2000. What are key takeaways? What's one or two for each of you for the first 12 or so months? Go.
It was exciting. Like I said, we were young enough that we were naive.
Yep.
And we didn't really know what we were doing. But again, we're both autonomous self-starters. It was fun. It was, hey, we're going to do this. It was a great big adventure.
Yep.
So I remember that. I remember in 98, it was, you know, right in the tech bubble. We were building diversified strategies. So if you weren't buying IPOs and concentrating in growth, you weren't doing that well. And I remember a set of clients coming in and saying, you guys don't get it. And we having the fortitude or discipline to say, you're right, we don't. We're going to manage risk. And launching in 2000 was right when the tech bubble was bursting.
Yep.
And it was the best thing that could have ever happened to us.
Yep.
And the market peaked in March of 2000, and we launched in July of 2000.
So it was not easy, but I tell a lot of people.
But there were a lot of frustrated people at that point as well.
For sure. But we just kept doing what we did.
Yep.
And, you know, I appreciate Scott because we have a plan, we stick to it, we put one foot in front of the other,
Yep.
we work hard and get after it. So what I remember, the one or two things was, it was all fun, it was all new, it was a big challenge. You had to explain yourself a lot because fee-based wealth management was not a thing.
Yeah, so you are educating the customer.
Oh my gosh. And we're also, I would say this concept of creative destruction is integral to who we are and what our culture is. So we were iterating on the fly. I mean, clients would ask us to do something and we'd look at each other and say, sure, let's figure out how to do it, roll up our sleeves, which is fun. That's a fun thing. So I remember it being difficult, but I don't remember it being onerous. I mean, it was a big adventure at that point. And we had a small business. And
I mean, it was Mark and me and, an analyst and an assistant. So it was, simple from that perspective. I do remember like distinct conversations with clients as we're launching. The fortunate thing was we stayed on the Lockwood platform as, we went from being employees of to they were a vendor. So we didn't have to repaper accounts. We didn't have to do all that. So it was a very simple conversation for those clients when we turned on True North July 1st of 2000. But I can remember like one conversation in particular, and with a client who'd been a client for 6 or 8 years at that point, and he was like, now what are you like? Like he just couldn't. Because in his mind, like you had to be affiliated with a big trust company or a big bank or a big brokerage firm, and it was kind of like, you're doing what? And like it just and so Mark's comment about having to explain and educate back then, I mean, no one knew what an RIA was, and no one knew what being a fiduciary was, and nobody knew about fee-based asset management, but those were all the things that eliminated the conflicts of interest that were so important. And so we had a steep hill to climb in terms of just trying to educate the marketplace. And it was just kind of, we've talked about this before, but it was just hand-to-hand combat. Just, kind of you win them one at a time by telling the story. And, it's a little easier to tell the story today, but it was hard, but it was exciting and it was exhilarating and it was fun. And then, 9/11 happens in the middle of all that, and we've been up and running a year. 9/11 hits. I mean, it was it was a very challenging time in the markets, but really exciting time.
Yeah, we grew some big muscles.
100%. I like struggle builds muscle. 100%.
For sure.
Let's fast forward. Owned and led the business for 24 years.
23. True North's been around 23 years.
23 years. What keeps you awake at night related to the business?
Related to the business? God, I hate to say not a lot.
Why do you hate to say that? That's incredible.
Yeah, not a lot. I really, business is missional for me.
Okay.
And just like I expressed to you, it's really, culture is really important to me, and our purpose is really important to me. And so I want to, our span of control or influence is less and less just because we have more and more people. And so I hope, that the younger generations are passing on that culture and the importance of that culture. So if there's one thing I would say, that's it. Trying to make sure that culture is intact.
I love it. What about you?
I would say the exact same thing. I don't really worry about anything. I mean, there things come and go that you might worry about, but I mean, and I think that's a testament to the people that we've assembled and that have joined us at True North. So, we're roughly 50 people today. It's an incredible group of people. They're hardworking, dedicated, and
far smarter than us.
Yeah, one of the greatest.
Which makes you smart. Realize that
one of the greatest gifts is when you have someone sitting in a seat who's far better than you in whatever that thing is, and you're like, okay, I don't really have to worry about that anymore because that person has the ball. And we're blessed in the sense that we've got an organization full of people that do that, for the organization. So
I love the phrase "quality attracts quality," and I have known y'all for 30 years, and I think that the organization that I've recently stepped into represents quality attracts quality.
Thank you.
Kudos to both of you guys.
Awesome.
Now we're going to shift gears a little bit. The two of you own a business. You're mid-50s. So you own
hypothetical scenario, right?
Hey, one of our guests,
Still
George.
Still mid.
Yeah, one of our guests, George. I asked him a question. And he said, "Well, what vintage are we discussing?" And Scott quickly called him out and said, "That's the nicest way to say, Doug. Am I talking your age or like everybody else's age?" So you're in a room and you've got 25 business owners. I want you to start to process and start to share as much story as you can. What are the good, bad, and ugly you have seen in growing a business and exiting a business? So this is your all's language. You do it every day. You're listening. This is where you got a business of grosses 1 million or 100 million. Perk up, because again, and I one of the opportunities, you own a business, so that is very subjective. You're both emotionally involved in it, but you have objectively consulted and watched 50, 100, 300, I don't know the number. What are some good, bad, and uglies that you want to coach up a business owner? Who wants to go first?
Go ahead.
You know, I would say I need a minute to kind of process the question, but I think one of the things that comes to mind quickly is, you know, most business owners rush into a transaction when it presents itself, you know, and so, you know, as we've had some of the guests on the podcast, they weren't anticipating an offer and it kind of came in from left field, unexpected. You know, others ran a more disciplined process to build up to that. But what we've observed is that the business owner, once that sort of comes into the purview, like they're 100% focused on that and everything else sort of goes away. And that's okay. I mean, you need that kind of energy to get a deal done, but the problem is that things get left undone, right? So, you know, we've kind of think about it in these pillars at True North in terms of, you know, there's a coaching element, which, you know, we talk about it as coaching, but it's what's your purpose? What's day 2 look like? How does this going to affect your life long term? What are you going to do with 16 hours a day for the next 30 years?
What's your wife going to do with you?
Right.
100%.
Like, so that's, you know, so I think to me, the thing that's missed most often is the intentionality around that. And I'll just, you know, share one story. We had a business owner, entrepreneur, exited. This was kind of during the financial crisis. Timing for them was great because they kind of got out before the crisis really hit. But then they hadn't really thought through what that next thing was. And literally it was several years of angst and anxiety. And, you know, the market didn't help because we went through, you know, a couple of years of real financial turmoil.
And there's a real loss of control for that business owner.
Totally.
Correct?
I would, yeah, keep going, but I've got something to add to
Go.
that.
So that person not having been able to take the time beforehand to think through what's life look like post-transaction and how am I going to spend my time and what's my purpose and, you know, what's life really mean? And like, because now all of a sudden you're in this, you know, you've lost control. It's a little bit of crisis. You know, there's just a tremendous amount of anxiety around that. And so it's
all different, which we typically don't handle different things well at first.
Well, and they haven't thought about what that looks like. So control is a big thing. Like, do you recognize, even though most business owners, and we acknowledge this, it feels like we're in control. We're not in control, right?
Right.
But there's a sense of control that goes away when you have to reinvest proceeds into instruments that you may not understand
and don't have control of.
Yeah, because I want to. You and Scott do have a great sense of control of the model that you live with every day.
For
All
sure.
of a sudden, we put $50 million into your bank. I think what I just heard you say there, now you are operating from a different model.
You're not used to allocation. You're not used to different instruments or expectation of return. You know, a lot of things that I have seen over the years is you've got this valuation on your business and on your balance sheet, and it looks great. You got to pay taxes, and then you got to reinvest it in something that may not have a yield or a cash flow element that matches the lifestyle that you've escalated as your business has gotten more successful. And so modeling what that looks like, we do have a very sophisticated client, and I remember at our old place, he would have offers and he would call us and say, hey, got this offer, can you model it and let me know what it looks like? And we were able to say, look, this is it. And he could easily say yay or nay.
Yeah.
Because he had a goal.
Yeah.
And he knew it would impact his life. A lot of business owners don't assume that.
He found a trusted partner, and he was doing some homework and due diligence prior to that crux of the decision.
He was focused on another pillar, which is the wealth planning pillar. And, you know, am I going to have enough money?
Yep.
I want to touch on what Mark said about control for a second, because as an entrepreneur, as we said, you don't really have control. Like, we think we have control, but we don't really have control. But we do have a lot of levers that we can push and pull. And so as a business owner, like you know the levers. You can, you know, slow down your payables, you can accelerate your receivables, you can lay people off, you can not do bonuses, you can not do the 401k match, you can trim your benefits. I mean, you know, there's all...
Or if it's going well, you know where to pour the gas on.
Yes, you can, there's all kinds of, there's hundreds of levers that you can push and pull on inside your business. As soon as you have, you know, whatever, $50 million, you pay your taxes, and now you're, you know, now you're at $40 million, and now you're going to go deploy that into a portfolio. You really have no control. I mean, you control which fund or which investment you make, but after that, like, you're out. And then bad things happen in the market, as they always do, and you don't have that sense of control, and it's very unsettling for business owners and entrepreneurs.
The other thing I would say, and this is more of a qualitative aspect, is, like it or not, we're all wrapped up in our business.
Yep.
And if you don't develop a sense of self beyond your business, once that business goes away, you're rudderless. Mm-hmm. And who am I? And what do I, not only what do I do, but how do I feel good about what I am doing, and what do I stand for? So it's a, business owners, like it or not, are attached to their business.
100%. And I this question comes to mind because I think you guys, I know you pretty well. I think you'll answer holistically. I think you'll answer it holistically. A common thing that continues to come up is, I think the assumption is accurate, why every business should build with the end or exit in mind. Mm-hmm. You've got a captive audience of business owners. It could be first generation, that could be 5 years into it. It could be third generation passed down to them. Why should a business owner, from your perspective, build with the exit in mind?
Because it's a process, and it doesn't happen overnight. And you've got to continually be tweaking whatever model you have to understand. And then if you have the end in mind, then you're able to evaluate when to take an opportunity or not. Now the irony Now the irony is, we don't have an end in mind, and part of it is because we enjoy the game. We've been fortunate to have probably more than we ever would have imagined. And now it's about trying to make an impact on the industry, trying to provide an opportunity for young people to be oriented in a great culture, to continue to grow. There's also, you know, the goal of being a dominant or the dominant firm in Texas and in the region. And that's a very attainable goal. I think it's out there for somebody or multiple people, and that's a worthy endeavor. So a lot of our employees say, well, when are you going to retire? And we like to work. Like I already told you why we're partners, because we like to work. But so we have goals in mind, but we don't have the end in mind.
Correct, but that's different. Right?
Yeah,
you don't disagree with the phrase "build with the end in mind."
For sure.
Chick-fil-A probably has been offered 1,000 times to sell the business.
Right.
They could sell the business. I would imagine at some point they built it with an exit, but they still choose not to.
Right.
Do you agree with the statement, building with the end in mind helps you build a better business?
For sure, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
And I would say the end in mind, in the example you just gave, there's a mission there, and they're going, you know, selling the business may be incongruent with the mission.
Well said.
So we're missional.
Correct.
there's still opportunity. But it's you know, we have the business we wanted 23 years ago that we thought we'd have 22 years ago, right?
Thought it happened faster, but
good
you
things
know,
take time.
Yeah, they do.
You go. I know.
I would echo what Mark said. You know, the only thing I might say a little differently is that, you know, if you don't sell it, you bought it. I mean, you're buying your business every day.
That's right.
So whether somebody else is buying it, I mean, if someone else is not buying it, then you're buying it.
Such a great visual, I think, for business owners to get your head wrapped around.
So you might as well make it the very best that it can possibly be, because you're buying it, you know, and you know, in our case, we want to own something that's quality, that's we're proud of, that, you know, is done the right way. And then, you know, the other part of it is you don't ever know what's around the corner, right? I mean, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow. We could, you know, be stricken with some health-related issue that takes us out of the business or whatever. And so having the business set up in a way where it's prepared for whatever's next is responsible, and as fiduciaries for our clients and, you know, as employers of our employees, like it would be poor stewardship if the business wasn't set up in a way for the families that we serve to be able to continue on if something happened to us or, you know, whatever. So there's a lot of layers as to why it's important to build with the end in mind, whether you're going to exit or not.
It's good business, isn't it?
It's good business. The other thing I would say is like, some people think the answer is an exit, and that is not always the answer. Right. Sometimes the answer is, hey, if we could just get a few of the right people in the right seat and maybe implement some process-oriented things, and, you know, get somebody who can handle the day-to-day so the business owner can kind of elevate up and get control of their life again, like, they might actually enjoy their work again. What drew them to the business in the very beginning may come back. And I think that's the way we feel, is that, you know, kind of for 25 years, we've been sort of grinding away, but, you know, we're sort of, the organization is what we always imagined that it could be. And now it's there, and it's kind of like, this is fun. You know, like, we're having a good time.
100%. What's the one or two of the most common mistakes you've seen a business owner make in the first 12 to 36 months from an exit?
Immediately investing in a portfolio, making permanent decisions on investments.
Boy, I love that word, though, making permanent investment decisions. One of the reasons why we named this podcast Decision Points is there are those moments in our life we make decisions that the results or consequences live with us for a very long time.
Yeah, if you sell your business and it's a bigger business, $20 million or on up, you're having hundreds of people call you. And every pitch sounds like a great pitch. Yep. And you just sold your business, so you're a smart guy, right? Or gal, and you're used to taking risk. And so you're gonna make some decisions. A lot of times we tell people, you don't have to make any decision. In fact, don't make a decision for at least 6 to 12 months. Now, we'll optimize things so you're not just having money in the bank, but we're not gonna make any permanent decisions, and we're gonna take you through this process. That's the biggest thing I see is, you know, if you have a successful business or a successful exit, you're pretty confident.
100%. You could feel bulletproof at the moment.
Yes, for sure.
Well, that's the thing. So think about the scenario, right? You've got successful business owner. Now they've got whatever, again, $40 million net of tax sitting in an account, and they're used to making decisions all day, every day, taking action, you know, and there's, particularly in the transaction process, but just building and growing a business, there's a lot of adrenaline that comes with making decisions. Now all of a sudden, you know, you don't have a desk anymore. You know, maybe you weren't asked to stay on for 2 years. You're at home. You got a lot of time. You got a lot of time to think, and now you're creating activity out of just, you know, like, because you've got to, because you're addicted to the,
and just habit.
And so then you start trying to make investment decisions or whatever, and some of it's emotional, some of it's, you know, I have to prove myself, some of it, you know, there's a lot of things that go into that. The other part of it is, like, I think the worst time in the world to hire an investment advisor is when you've just exited and now you have all this cash sitting in the bank.
For sure.
Such a great
Because
point.
For sure.
everybody's going to find out about your sale.
Yep.
Everybody's going to call you, and if you do run a process, it's going to be very, very, very difficult for you as the business owner to be able to discern the difference between firm A, B, C, D, however many people you talk to. It'll be a little easier to say, okay, big bank, big brokerage, I get that model. Independent firm, I get that model. But if you line up 5 big banks or big brokerage firms next to each other, or you line up 4 or 5 RIAs next to each other, it's going to be hard to discern the difference. So, we believe that the better time to establish and build that relationship is pre-transaction.
Of course.
When there's no pressure.
Yep.
Nobody's trying to sell you anything.
Yep.
Nobody's trying to convince you that they're the greatest thing in the world. You're just building a trusted relationship with someone who's going to help you give you good advice and hopefully help you down that, that transaction process. And then after the fact, you can just relax. You can sit back and
it's part of the plan. It's
right.
the plan that you've
Well,
talked
yeah,
about,
yeah,
you've built, and in mind. It's just it's seamless.
We tell people, don't make any big decisions for a year.
Yeah.
Just live with this for a year and just, see where your head is a year from now as the dust kind of settles because there's, it's exciting when that happens. It's the culmination of a lot of hard work and, just let all that kind of settle before you go make a bunch of commitments to whatever, second homes, third homes, airplanes, whatever the things are that, people get excited about.
That a lot of those decisions are pretty permanent. And
Yes.
to unwind are really difficult to
Yes.
unwind. Mark, Scott, this has been incredible. As we start to kind of wrap up, any kind of final thoughts?
I'm going to give you a bias here, but we've been business owners.
Yeah.
We've also been wealth managers, investment advisors. We have an expertise in wealth management itself, but we're uniquely different in that we own and operate a business. We've started a business. We've made a payroll. We've had to fire people. We know that impact. I think we're uniquely situated to help business owners think through the pre-transaction process of coming up with a plan and even after the exit, because that is us.
Exactly.
And most financial advisors are employees of someone else that most often doesn't invest in what they're pitching and isn't running a business. They're an employee from somebody.
I think, it's one of the things, I love your kind of final thought there. Often people who are the best at something, helping somebody else, are the worst at it in their own life. One of the challenges I'm sure that you all have, making sure you're always having this out-of-body experience, are Mark and Scott having the same objective planning into the True North business. Because you see this every day, and I think that's what I hear you saying there is that, okay, we run a business. Are we doing all of these steps ourselves?
Well, I think to add to that very point is because we've seen it so many times not work well, I think we're a little more sensitive to the fact that we have to do this.
You've got some scar tissue from other people.
Yes, and so we've learned, and so we're trying to do the same things that we're coaching our clients to do.
Business is busy. You all have consulted, helped a lot of people. Life's full of decisions and choices. Why the decision to create Decision Points podcast?
That's a great question. So we as we've talked about, we've watched, I don't know the number, but hundreds probably of business owners and entrepreneurs exit over the years. And we have felt like there's not a great place for this content to be assembled to help business owners and entrepreneurs exit better. The statistic is 75% of all business owners and entrepreneurs, and the words that are used are profoundly regret in this particular study, profoundly regret exiting a business 12 to 18 months post-transaction. So okay, why is that? And we started asking ourselves that question. We observed that. And so we said, look, if we can be helpful and help entrepreneurs have a better outcome and not be part of that statistic, then that's going to be a great thing.
That stat is so shocking to me. Mark, I'll turn it to you. When they say 75% profoundly regret it, Tell me why you think that is.
I think it's huge change. I mean, we talked about trying to find out what you're all about after you exit the thing that you've spent your life building. I think it's change, where everybody's change resistant, and it is a profound change. So I think that's the biggest thing. It's the not knowing and the lack of planning, and wow, this is not what I thought it was going to be. And so the more you can walk through that process with a trusted advisor and play those scenarios out, you're at least inoculated to some of the change, not all of the change. But that's what I would say.
It's well said.
And potentially, as you learn more, as you become educated about the process, you may get to the conclusion that an exit is not the answer.
Absolutely.
And that's a great outcome.
That's a great outcome.
Because you have more clarity.
For sure.
About what?
Your purpose and what life's all about and what you were put here for.
And what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish. And yeah, you're right. I mean, sometimes the best thing is not to do anything at all.
One of my favorite comments early in this development of decision points was with Drew Monictala, our chief investment officer. The discipline that some significant percentage of time, 50, 60, 70, 80%, you may not need to do anything. And that's really difficult for leaders. Decision points, I think you hear, and if you've listened to the podcast, is to help you both personally and professionally live a fulfilling life. Money's wonderful, but it will not buy you a purpose. You got to know both, and you want to have both. Thank you for joining us on Decision Points.